You're staring at a closed door and calling it a delay. You've been praying, planning, pushing, trying to be patient, trying to act like you're okay. But deep down, you're frustrated because you can feel it. Something you want is not moving. A relationship won't progress. A job won't open. A dream keeps hovering but never landing. A breakthrough keeps getting almost but never fully. And you've started whispering that sentence that sounds spiritual but bleeds disappointment. Maybe God is delaying me. But tonight I need you to hear something that will sting at first and then set you free. God isn't delaying you. He's protecting you from what you're begging for. And I know that doesn't feel comforting when you're tired, when you're lonely, when you're hungry for change, when you're watching other people get what you've been praying for, when your patience is wearing thin and your faith feels like it's running on fumes. Protection feels like punishment when you don't see what's behind the curtain because you think you're being held back. But what if you're being held up? What if the very thing you're crying over is the very thing God has been shielding you from? Let me say it another way. If God gave you what you wanted when you wanted it, it would not be a blessing. It would be a trap with nice wrapping paper. It would be a gift that kills you slowly. It would be a door that looks like destiny but leads to damage. And God loves you too much to answer prayers that would destroy you. This is the part where people get offended because they confuse God's love with God's approval. They think if they desire it, it must be right. They think if they prayed about it, God must support it. They think if it feels urgent, it must be God's timing. But urgency is not always instruction. Sometimes urgency is anxiety trying to control the timeline. And God does not move on the clock of your panic. He moves on the calendar of your purpose. Now, here's what makes this so hard. You don't just want the thing. You want relief. You want the thing because you believe it will finally quiet something inside you. You want that relationship because you think it will finally make you feel chosen. You want that opportunity because you think it will finally make you feel enough. You want that money because you think it will finally make you feel safe. You want that move because you think it will finally make you feel free. You want that breakthrough because you think it will finally prove God hasn't forgotten you. And when God doesn't give it, you don't just feel disappointed, you feel exposed. Because now you have to sit with the truth. You were leaning on the outcome more than you were leaning on God. And God, in His mercy, refuses to let your faith become dependent on a result. So He protects you, not just from the thing, from what the thing would do to you if you got it too early, too fast, or for the wrong reasons. Because some of you are praying for a door while God is watching what you would carry through that door. And what you carry matters more than what you enter. If you walk into a blessing with pride, it becomes poison. If you walk into a relationship with unhealed wounds, it becomes a battlefield. If you walk into purpose with insecurity, you become a slave to applause. If you walk into favor with impatience, you will sabotage it the moment it stops feeling exciting. So God blocks, God slows, God redirects, and you call it delay. But heaven calls it protection. Now let's talk real, because most people only think protection means God is saving me from bad people. And yes, sometimes that's true. But the deeper protection is God saving you from yourself, from your patterns, from your appetite for control, from your habit of making emotional decisions and then asking God to bless them, from your tendency to chase what sparkles instead of what's stable, from your desire to be rescued from discomfort instead of being matured through it. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes you're not asking God for a blessing. You're asking God for an escape. Escape from loneliness, escape from boredom, escape from the pain you don't want to process, escape from the season that is forcing you to grow. So you want the next thing quickly because you think it will save you from feeling. But God doesn't save you by numbing you. He saves you by healing you. And healing requires time because wounds don't disappear because you found a new distraction. They disappear when you face them with God. That's why the door isn't opening, because the door you're begging for is not your next step. It's your next distraction, and God will not upgrade your life while you keep avoiding your soul. Now, here comes the first twist, because this is where you realize how deep this sway to you really is. Sometimes God protects you by withholding something good, because it would become an idol in your hands. Yes, an idol. Not because the thing is evil, but because your heart has been treating it like salvation. You don't just want it, you need it. And the moment you need something besides God to be okay, that thing is no longer a blessing. It's a throne. And God refuses to compete for first place in your heart, so He protects you by not giving you what you would worship. Because idols don't always look like statues. Sometimes idols look like a relationship you can't imagine living without. Sometimes idols look like a dream you've made your identity. Sometimes idols look like approval, likes, attention, being seen. Sometimes idols look like my plan, my timeline, my control. And God loves you too much to hand you something that will quietly replace Him. So He blocks it. He slows it. He lets it frustrate you. Not because He's cruel, because He's faithful. Because if He gave you everything you begged for while your heart was still addicted to it, you would drift from Him and call it success. And you would wake up one day with everything you wanted and no peace. That's a tragedy. So He protects you. Now here's the second twist. Protection often looks like the thing you're mad about: a door closing, a person leaving, a no that embarrasses you, a delay that makes you feel behind, a season where nothing moves, a setback that forces you to slow down, and your emotions interpret it as rejection. But God interprets it as rescue, because you don't know what He knows. You only see the surface of what you're asking for. God sees the hidden cost. You see the job title. God sees the environment that would drain you and make you compromise. You see the relationship chemistry. God sees the character issues you're ignoring because you're lonely. You see the opportunity. God sees the pressure that would expose your lack of foundation. You see the open door. God sees the trap on the other side. And the scariest part? Sometimes the trap isn't obvious. Sometimes it looks like blessing. Because the enemy doesn't always bait you with evil. He baits you with what you want. He baits you with the shortcut. He baits you with the version of your dream that comes without waiting, without pruning, without surrender. And if you take it, you won't realize you were trapped until you're deep inside it. So God protects you by making the shortcut unavailable. He makes it feel like you're stuck because He refuses to let you be snared. Now listen carefully, because this is where the message turns into a mirror. If God is protecting you, there is usually something you're not seeing. 1. You're not ready for it yet. Not because you're not good enough, but because you're not formed enough. Your heart is still too reactive. Your discipline is still too inconsistent. Your identity is still too dependent on outcomes. And God will not let you step into something that your current self would destroy. 2. It's not what you think it is. Some things shine from far away but rot up close. Some doors look like destiny until you step in and realize it's a prison dressed like promotion. 3. It would cost you something you can't afford to lose: your peace, your purity, your family, your integrity, your calling, your mental health, your spiritual fire. And God has weighed the cost, even if you haven't. That's protection, and protection is love that thinks ahead. Now let's talk about the part nobody wants. You may be praying for something God already warned you about, quietly, not with thunder, not with a dramatic prophecy, but with a discomfort you keep ignoring. You feel unsettled when you think about it. You keep getting almost, but never fully. You keep losing peace the closer it gets. You keep sensing something off, but you call it nerves. You keep having to justify it to yourself, to other people, to God. And deep down, if this was truly right, you wouldn't need to force it, because God's will doesn't need manipulation. God's will doesn't need you to lie, hide, chase, beg, and panic. When it's God, there's peace, even if it's scary. When it's not God, there's anxiety, even if it's exciting. So if you're constantly anxious about losing it, forcing it, protecting it, hiding it, it might be because it's not a blessing, it's an attachment, and God protects you from attachments that would become chains. Now, I need you to catch this. Protection often feels like loss before it feels like clarity. Because God doesn't always explain what He's saving you from. He rarely gives you a full list. He just says no. He just says wait. He just removes it. And you don't understand until later, sometimes months later, sometimes years later, when you look back and realize, if that happened, I would have been ruined. That's when you stop calling it delay. You call it mercy. But tonight, you don't have later. You have now. So let's make this real, practical, and personal. What are you begging God for right now? Is it a person, a move, a job, a breakthrough, a platform, a marriage, a relationship returning, a business taking off, a door opening? Now ask the question most people avoid. If God gave me this right now, what version of me would walk into it? Would it be a healed version of me or a desperate version? Would it be a disciplined version or a lazy version that only moves when feelings cooperate? Would it be a humble version or a proud version that thinks success equals worth? Would it be a surrendered version or a controlling version that treats God like a consultant? Because the version of you matters. And God is not just answering your prayers. He's building your capacity. Because capacity is what protects you when blessings arrive. Without capacity, blessings become burdens. Without capacity, favor becomes pressure. Without capacity, success becomes a spotlight that exposes your cracks. So God builds capacity first. And that's why it feels slow. Because God is not trying to give you a moment, He's trying to give you a future. Now we're entering the part where it gets intense, because here's the climax truth. Some of you are calling it delay, because you're not getting what you want. But God is calling it deliverance, because He's keeping you from what would destroy you. And you don't see it because you're focused on the pain of not having it. But heaven is focused on the peace you'll have later because you didn't get it. This is why some prayers aren't answered. Not because you prayed wrong, not because you're unloved, but because you're asking for something that would feed your weakness more than it would feed your purpose. And God refuses to strengthen what is still trying to rule you. Let me say something that might be the most freeing sentence you've heard in a long time. God's no is not the end of your story. It's the end of a trap. God's wait is not abandonment. It's preparation. God's silence is not indifference. It's protection. And I know that's hard to swallow when you're watching time pass, when you're watching your age go up, when you're watching people move ahead, when you're watching doors open for others, when you feel like you're late. But hear me, you're not late. You're being aligned. Because being on time in the wrong place is not a blessing. It's a mistake with a schedule. God would rather you arrive late to the right thing than early to the wrong thing. Because early can feel good, but wrong will cost you. Now, let's hit the most sensitive area, relationships. Because a lot of you are praying for a person to return, praying for a relationship to work, praying for a marriage to become what it used to be, praying for someone to finally choose you, and you keep calling it a delay. But what if God is protecting you from being tied to someone who would slowly kill your spirit? What if that person isn't your partner? They're your pattern. They're your comfort addiction. They're your emotional oxygen. And you don't love them the way you think you do. You love what they help you avoid. Loneliness, self-work, facing your wounds, sitting with God. So when God blocks it, it feels like death. But sometimes it's not death. It's detox. Because you can't build a healthy future on an unhealthy attachment, and God will not let you trade your calling for a relationship that keeps you small. He protects you, even if you cry about it. Now let's talk about money and success, because some of you are begging God to lift you quickly. You want the platform, the fame, the growth, the audience, the recognition, the financial breakthrough, and God is not against blessing you, but God will not increase you until your character can survive it. Because success is loud. It amplifies what's already inside you. If you have insecurity, success makes you crave applause like oxygen. If you have pride, success makes you unbearable and blind. If you have lust, success gives you more access to temptation. If you have laziness, success makes you inconsistent and eventually exposed. So God protects you by slowing the climb. He trains you in hidden places. He forces consistency when nobody claps. He builds your foundation when you think nothing is happening. And you call it delay. But it's protection from a fall that would be public. Now, here's the moment I want you to breathe, because I'm not here to crush you. I'm here to shift you. If God is protecting you, you don't need to panic. You need to partner. Because protection is not passive. It's an invitation to ask better questions. Instead of, God, why won't you give me this? Ask, God, what are you saving me from? Instead of, God, when will this happen? Ask, God, who do I need to become before it happens? Instead of, God, open the door. Ask, God, close every door that would destroy me, even if it hurts. That prayer is dangerous, but it's real. Because it shifts you from craving outcomes to craving alignment. And alignment is where peace lives. Now let's make it intensely practical, because I don't want this to be a beautiful speech you forget when the emotions fade. Here are 3 signs that God is protecting you, not delaying you. First sign, you keep getting almost, but never fully. It's close enough to tempt you, but it never lands. That's not always the devil. Sometimes it's God preventing a connection you're romanticizing. Second sign, your peace disappears the closer you get. You're excited at a distance, anxious up close. That's your spirit sensing danger, even if your emotions are hungry. Third sign, you keep having to compromise to keep it alive. You have to lie, hide, lower standards, bend convictions, silence your conscience, negotiate with your integrity. That's not a blessing, that's bondage. If any of those are you, don't rush. God might be saving your life. Now, the final twist, the one that makes this message land. God protects you not only from what is wrong, but from what is right at the wrong time. Because timing is not a small detail. Timing is everything. Even good things can ruin you if you receive them before you're formed for them. Imagine giving a child a sword because they asked for it. The sword isn't evil. The timing is. Some of you are holding a sword request and calling God slow, but God sees you would cut yourself with it. So he says, not yet. Not because he hates you, because he wants you alive, because he wants you whole, because he wants your blessing to become a testimony, not a trauma. So what do you do in a season like this? You stop trying to force what God is filtering. You stop chasing what God is blocking. You stop begging for what God is refusing. And you start doing the one thing that turns protection into promotion. You surrender your timeline. Because the moment you surrender your timeline, you can finally hear God clearly. And clarity is what you've been missing. Because anxiety makes you deaf, desperation makes you blind, but surrender makes you aware, and awareness makes you wise. So tonight, if you're in a delay season, don't just sit there angry. Let it work on you. Let it expose what you've been idolizing. Let it heal what you've been avoiding. Let it mature what you've been rushing. Let it build what you've been skipping. Because the door you're begging for isn't your real breakthrough. Your real breakthrough is becoming the kind of person who won't lose themselves when the door finally opens. And that's what God is doing. He's not punishing you. He's positioning you. He's not ignoring you. He's insulating you. He's not delaying you. He's protecting you from a version of your life you would have regretted with tears. So here's the only question that matters now. What are you begging God for that he might be saving you from? Name it. Because naming it breaks the spell of obsession, and once the obsession breaks, peace returns. Not because you got what you wanted, because you finally trust the one who knows what you need. And when you trust him like that, your prayers change. You stop praying like a beggar trying to convince God. You start praying like a child who knows their father is good, even when the answer is not yet. And one day, you'll look back at this season and realize, what you called delay was God's love standing in front of your life, saying, not this way, not this cost, not this trap, not this version of you. I'm taking you somewhere safer. And when the right door finally opens, one that doesn't require you to betray yourself, you'll walk through it with peace, not panic, with confidence, not desperation, with wisdom, not impulse. And you'll know, God didn't slow you down to hurt you. He slowed you down to save you. That's not delay. That's protection.